イタリウイスキーあ、イタリビーよくでねばらきましけれて。おー、ノー、それに、あのレビーあれに行くぞ Let's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat, and I am joined by a very special guest. So, a little bit of backstory. I was just kind of like surfing around. I think it was my Facebook. You know how the shorts will come up, and sometimes you'll stop to look at a cute video of a dog or something. I love dogs, and I happened to see. No, Jojo, I'm not. My dog looked up like, who, me? And I happened to see this short video from this user. I think it was called Effective Purpose, and he was talking about men, and that doesn't often come up in my social media like randomly. And so I saw the video and I thought it was really good, even though it was very short. And so I reached out, and I am joined by Matt of Effective Purpose. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Hello, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So I guess the first thing I want to do is ask you, tell me a little bit about what you do online. What is Effective Purpose, and why did you start this?
Yeah, I started this a couple of years ago just because I was noticing that there wasn't a whole lot of resources for Christian men in particular, for just how to solve problems. I mean, as I'm sure you guys have discussed a lot on your own channels, there's a lot of stuff that guys are facing. These are relatively new problems. I mean, in human history, we've never really seen anything quite like this, where men are just sort of under attack in a lot of ways across the board. They're behind, they're struggling, and it seems like society wants them to struggle. And there just isn't a lot of resources for guys to approach those problems and attack them and deal with them in a positive way. It came up for me because as a Christian, I grew up in the church, and I, like a lot of guys, struggled heavily, especially in the dating world. I struggled with mental health. I was just, trying to do life and finding that it just wasn't working. A lot of stuff wasn't working. Career stuff wasn't working. Dating life was going absolutely nowhere. It was just getting rejected left, right, and center, and not understanding why. I just had no clue why this stuff wasn't working, and just maybe over spiritualizing things a bit, wondering, oh no, is my faith just too terrible? Does God hate me? What's going on here? Am I just doomed to fail for the rest of my life? Is this just what's going on? Until I got some help from a Christian counselor who is much more practically minded than a lot of the stuff that I've been receiving before that point. And she kind of helped me work through it and expose a lot of lies that I believed about myself and my lack of my perceived helplessness in my situation. Yeah. And that sent me on this journey of like looking for resources. Like, okay, I have agency. There's things that I can do to make my life better. There's things that I can do to succeed in some of these areas that I've been failing, but it's going to take work, and it's going to take finding some resources and looking for people who've done it before, looking for people who've solved those problems before. And I spent a few years after that just looking through what ended up being probably what, you guys would describe as a lot of red pill resources, as, just trying to figure out like, okay, how do women operate? Like, how do they think? Like, what do they find desirable and why? Because that's not something that's ever discussed among Christian men. You just sort of, it's a giant question mark. There's just a blank space on the board.
Almost like the mystery is the point.
Yeah.
like you're supposed to be
right,
in the dark a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like, in a way, and it's not just Christian culture that does this, but Christian culture almost idealizes that sort of mystery of women, as if they're just like this sacred angelic creature that's just like, sent down from heaven to bless you. And you're just supposed to allow it to be this romantic mystery forever, but that didn't really work. Like I wanted it to be that because that to me felt really romantic, and I thought that that would be romantically fulfilling for a woman to just mysteriously decide that she was going to fall in love with me one day.
Sure.
But that didn't happen, and like I went through a lot of bad dating experiences where I thought that was going to happen, but then she just, she left, and I didn't understand why. I didn't understand that there was a lot of stuff that I could have been doing that could have, prevented that, and
Yeah.
stuff that I could have been working on to build myself up, and just in terms of, making my own life a more positive place for me to, exist. But yeah, I started finding a lot of resources, and was just, I couldn't find any that were coming from people that I would trust as Christian sources, because it was either like
Hmm.
I had to go to secular sources who a lot of times would get the data right and they'd get the information like correct, but a lot of the stuff they said that I should do with that, as far as like, spinning plates and like, oh, no, never have a
Sure.
long-term relationship. That's terrible. That's stuff that are just like, that's kind of not workable for my worldview.
Hmm.
And, and also I noticed it was laced with a lot of just bitterness and
Hmm.
just and to me that was not, I didn't view that as healthy for me. Like I don't want to be a type of person who's just like focused on like what everyone else is doing wrong and how how I'm so mad that they're wronging me. I would much rather try to find solutions to the problems.
Yeah.
And so I just found that there weren't any sources like that for Christian men. So I was like, well, I might as well start something. And so that's kind of where I began, and just sort of
Hmm.
have been fumbling through it and experimenting in, and
Yeah.
figuring
Yeah.
some
So
stuff out here and there.
how long have you been doing this for?
Um, a, Almost 2 years now, about 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, it's only
Yeah.
recently started to get a little bit more traction and attention because oh, you start out, you have no idea what you're doing or how any of this stuff works or what anybody's looking for. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And did your okay? So about a little bit about your church. Does your church have a men's group? Do you have like any like we do this stuff online, but do you have any
yeah,
like in flesh and blood people that you talk
Y-
to and sort of coordinate things with?
they do. I've gone to a few different churches over the last few years, or a couple. And there are some groups for men, but most of their focus is on like Bible study and faith building stuff, which is good stuff as far as I'm concerned. But they're largely still sort of, I guess, blind would be the right way to say
Yeah.
it. They're not sort of aware of a lot of the specific practical problems that young men in particular are going through. And so those groups exist. There are, small groups, home groups, men's groups, that type of thing, but they don't really focus on, okay, let's get down to brass tacks and fix some stuff and find some ways to get around these problems. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So one of the video that particularly jumped out at me because um, I okay. So for the people in the audience, by the way, if you guys have a question or comment, please send us a super chat or a direct super chat message to feedthebadger.com. And you can just give us your thoughts on this. I think that even though I am speaking to a man who discusses things from a Christian perspective, there is a universal way to apply these conversations. I mean, it's practical stuff at the end
yeah,
of the day, and I don't think that that's like the most relevant thing. But because there are men of all different beliefs and ideologies, and they're all looking for women. They're looking for partners. They're looking to
yeah,
get married and start a family. And I think that most of the guys, you were talking a little bit about this kind of like undercurrent of bitterness, and I think it is a thing that I've seen as well. I think that the reason is because, well, it's a reason. I don't want to speak for every example, but it's because I think that most of these men did start off like thinking, I'm gonna get to a certain age, I'm gonna have a decent job, I'm gonna find a good woman, I'm gonna fall in love with her, I'm gonna marry her, and I'm gonna start a family. And
yeah.
and what their expectation turned out that it didn't shake out that way, and I think that a lot of them felt like lied to, or
Yes.
that and so
Oh, for
because of
sure. Yeah.
that,
I
yeah,
felt
that
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we understand that, and there's a couple of different angles there. So you know, we talk a little bit about the social stuff, you know, and like we're all about like the self help and the you know building yourself up. But where the rubber really hits the road is really in the legal
Yeah,
issues, and those are the things that I think are a very real obstacle that we have to confront. And this
yeah.
is the thing that because you know there is like you're not on Twitter, right? Probably avoid.
Yeah, it's not my favorite environment. No.
Yeah, yeah. So on the internet everywhere, really, there is like a large sort of debate going on between traditionalist. I don't even like to say it that way because I don't think
Yeah.
it sounds like a category. I mean, normal people, you know, like like that
Yeah.
men that want a normal, you know, healthy marriage and family. But a lot of them do have like religious background, so we would call them, you know, tradcons or traditionalists,
Yeah.
and the kind of more, you know, red pill parts of the internet. And the argument is about, you know, whether or not a man should, you know, be essentially like trying to fight to get like his you know, be treated fairly in courts and things like that, and like see if the laws can be changed, see if policies can be observed. And I think that all of those things are real, you know, real dangers, and it's making men more averse. And that sets aside, you know, the degree to which women have been I can only call it propagandized to essentially see men as competition, you know,
Mm.
see men as opponents on a battlefield,
Yeah.
and not as, you know, essentially a complementary person, because men generally love women.
Yeah.
And I think even the guys in the red pill that are kind of angry, they still love women, they want to love them, you know, but they're
Yeah.
frustrated.
I've
So
I've noticed that exact same thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that what was so the video that I getting back to the video, the thing that I thought was neat was that you were kind of, I wouldn't say calling them out, but you did see this kind of sentiment coming from a lot of, you know, I guess pastors or you know, religious sort of spokesmen saying to men essentially that they weren't essentially giving them support, but it was more like, hey, you know, man up, like you gotta wife up these women, you gotta deal
Yeah.
with it, you know, roll the dice, whatever it is. And I think that you have correctly observed that, you know, that's not really, it's driving men away, you know what
Yes.
I mean? And so I guess like if there's any more you want to expand on that a little bit for the people watching.
Yeah, so something that I've noticed in the church right now, there's a few reasons. There's a bunch of reasons actually we can get into about like why young men in particular are leaving the church. But one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that most Christian leaders are guys who are either Gen Xers, so
Mm-hmm.
they're in their 50s or 60s, or they are older millennials, so late 30s, early 40s. Those are guys who, at this point in their life, they completed the dating process more than 10 years ago, right? For a lot of them, it was back in the 80s or 90s, and for many of them, it wasn't any more recent than 2015. So they're not aware of the changes that have happened in the dating world. To them, they still view it as this sort of they still view it as an equal playing field in a way.
Mm-hmm.
That there's this sort of this balance between the sexes, that there's this assumption that the average woman is going to be reasonably attracted to the average man, and so um, the assumption then that they work out from there is that, okay, they do see that relationships aren't forming, but their assumption is that the bottleneck is with the men. The popular narrative in the church right now says that that porn is the major problem. So basically,
So
the
it's kind of still men's fault in a way.
exactly, well, that is the primary belief, and that's where most of the teaching and instruction gets directed. Is the assumption is that porn is causing men's standards for women to rise to a point that real women can't reach, and so the guys just aren't interested in real women anymore. And so that must, according to the logic of that narrative, that must be the reason why dating isn't happening. And so that's why you'll hear a lot of messages from Christian leaders saying, "Hey guys, you need to put that stuff aside and you need to start pursuing real women." Basically, yeah, just man up, just do it, stop being a coward. That's another thing is you'll hear the narrative that the guys are just they're soft, they're too
Mm-hmm.
scared, they're just cowards, they're not brave enough. They just need to step up and just be brave and just go, get told no a couple of times and then it'll be fine, it'll work out. Um,
Yeah.
the problem is that many of them, because they completed the dating process before the major shifts in, that have been brought about by social media and dating apps and even just COVID, the lockdowns completely changed the landscape for dating to where now it's almost entirely online and that's just ubiquitous. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know the data. They don't know that the average woman does not find the average man to be attractive. The average woman is, actually pretty turned off by the average man. Most women are
I
aiming
was,
up
yeah,
quite a lot.
yeah. I was just gonna ask about women because it seems like, and it's this is the thing that we've observed in after 10 years of doing this, that in the most well-intentioned people. So I'm not
Yeah.
even talking about like the people who like legitimately for whatever reason have put men in a black category.
Mm-hmm.
But even the most well-intentioned people have a blind spot when it
Yes.
comes to men's particular issues and women's, I guess, their behavior, their it's more than just their standards, but their standards are a byproduct of that. And I was
Yeah.
just gonna ask, like, well, if men's standards are supposedly impacted by porn, which there could be some truth to, but I think that even men who avoid that, I watched a video that was viral, and I want to show it to you, but I don't think I can do it here without
Mm-hmm.
screwing up my whole layout. But I watched this viral video of a man on the street, one of those men on the street, and he's got a microphone. He's
Yeah.
asking questions, and he's at this, like, on the streets at night in a city. There's a lot of young people, men and women. They're all a little buzzed. They've been partying, whatever. And he's asking women, do we need men? Do we need men? And then he's
Yeah.
asking men, do we need women? Do we need women? And the women, all of them in the video, this could have been edited to like make, to show a specific point of view. It's possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think that this is really unrealistic. All the women in the video said, we don't need men. Why would we need men other than to look at them or whatever? And the men, when they were asked, they were like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, I love women." Like they were, and
Yeah.
and when I saw it, I was like, "Yeah, this could be a bit slanted because it's edited and everything," but I don't think this is really unrealistic because I have seen it with my own eyes, and I think that it's important that, and we've seen some data on this too, that it's important that we put in perspective the fact that women, they do get like a pretty unrealistic view on what their worth is. And it's true that they should want a man that's going to be stable, but I mean there are people who say that if the man's not good enough, it's dangerous for them and all these
Yeah.
other things. But I think that it is really like extreme. Like women's standards are very high, and I think that men that can't meet them, we're gonna have a problem, because I think that when you have videos also, or you have like in examples of women who are in their 30s and they are still alone, and they have put off family and relationships for career, and they're weeping because they don't have kids, and
Yeah.
they made this terrible mistake because they were sold a bill of goods. They were also lied to. It's just that
Yeah.
these women learn this later, and it's kind
Too
of
late
like
sometimes,
too
in a
late,
way, yeah.
too late in many cases. Yeah, I learned that. I don't know if you know about the birth rates, but like aside from
Yeah,
our
they're
birth rates plummeting,
yeah, they're
um,
tanking.
that yeah, in most instances, the high percentage of women not having children, it's not because they are infertile or waited too long or have some kind of medical condition. It's because it just didn't happen. Like they
Yeah.
were waiting, and then there was no man. Like by that time, the available men weren't there, or they didn't find one that they were willing to settle down with.
Yeah.
So I think this is like the real issue. And when men can't find women, they become, I think that could also be a problem. They're
Yeah.
idle, they're restless, they're angry. So this is definitely something that, needs to be discussed, but it has to be done in a way that I think men need to feel like welcomed, supported.
Yeah. That's going to be difficult until we solve the problem of the power narrative, because you have,
Yes.
I mean, you have the standards issue, which is that, most women have a extremely high expectation of what they're going to get from a man. The other part of the problem is the reason why these women are staying away from dating for so long, and they're pursuing their career and all that bill of goods that they were sold. It all comes from the power dynamic narrative, which is the idea that you can only be happy and you can only be valuable as a person if you have power. You need to, at the very least, have complete control and agency over your life. You can't be under anyone else's power, because on the other side, if you're under someone else's power, they are always automatically taking advantage of you, because
It's
yeah,
never, they're not doing it in your best interest, right?
No,
they're not the wise king, they are the tyrant.
Because power is the thing that gives you value, and it's the way that you're able to make good things happen in your life. So if someone else has power over you, that means they're using you for their value and their happiness. So it's always a taking advantage of thing.
Mm-hmm.
In a I mean, what I would call like a biblical view of relationship power dynamics, that was never the way that God set it up. Like, that was not what he intended from the beginning. What he intended was for us to have authority based on responsibility. So if as a man, God holds men primarily accountable for the outcome of the people that he places under that man's care. So if you're the head of that household and bad things happen on your watch, God holds you accountable first. It was like that all the way at the beginning. God, even though it was Eve that ate of the fruit, it was Adam who was primarily held responsible for the first sin. And it's like that throughout scripture. God holds men primarily accountable, and that appears to be why he gives them the buck stops here kind of authority. Because if you're it's not fair if you're the one that's like, hey, a bad thing happened, but you didn't have any authority to be able to stop that bad thing from happening. So you're given authority as a man, A, because you're held accountable, and B, because you're expected to use it for other people's benefit. It's not for your own it's not for your own worth. Your value doesn't come from power or any ranking on any scale. It comes from your identity as a child of God. And so you don't need power to be happy. You don't need power to be fulfilled or for your life to be meaningful. It's a tool that you use to bring about the best possible outcomes for everybody in your sphere of influence.
Right.
And until we get rid of that narrative that says that you can't be happy unless you have power, women will always pursue power. Everyone will. Men will try. We're in this sort of catch-up phase of we're trying to fight to get it back, and it will just continue to be this pendulum that swings back and forth as long as that narrative is there.
Right. So just to expand a little bit on that Adam and Eve, so that people understand, the thing about Adam and Eve is that they both screwed up. So Eve obviously screwed up because she listened to the serpent and ate the fruit. But Adam screwed up not only because he also partook, but because when God approached and confronted them, Adam tried to pass the buck to Eve. Oh no, she made me do it, right? So this is the reason. But this is the problem with where we are now, is that in theory, on paper, men are supposed to be, the buck stops with them. They should have the responsibility, but they can't have that without the authority. And where we are now is that men don't have authority.
But they are still held accountable for all the bad things that happen, yes.
Right. They're still responsible. And women are the opposite of that. Women have all of the authority, and they seem to have no responsibility. Like, we have no mechanism of accountability for women,
Yeah.
or at least not a social one where you know, like if a woman can decide to be a single mother, she can decide to, you know, be really promiscuous and all this other, and we're supposed to not just not judge that, but we're supposed to celebrate that. We're expected to. I mean, at least in the world outside the church. I'm not speaking for that world, but I mean like the secular world or whatever, the earthly realm. And that is, I think, and on top of that, women are they are free to use the government as a weapon against men and anyone
Yeah.
that stands in their way. And this goes back to your statement about power, because I think that they have, again, they've been fed this line that that somehow men working jobs, no matter how dangerous, no matter how hard they were, that was a privilege that women did not get, even though men only did those things for women.
Yeah.
You know, like if you you know, we built this modern society, these buildings, electricity, running water, plumbing, etc., because men were trying to provide the best and safest world for women. And you know, right now a lot of women, maybe most women, they don't see that because they're maybe too separated from it. You know, they're
Yeah.
working in air conditioned office jobs, and
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know, they don't
It's a lot
experience
more.
that world.
Yeah. I still love that. What's his Andrew Schultz joke where he talks about like women, you timed your fight for equality brilliantly. You know, it's
Yeah,
just like,
exactly.
you know, 5,000 years ago, they're like, oh, you know, oh, there's lions and bears out there. Okay, we'll just pick the berries. You guys got that stuff. Then air
Yeah.
conditioning comes in offices. We want equality. You know, yeah,
Exactly.
that's actually is a fair point. And the most recent video that I put out, I went through sort of more recent history of, you know, just what it was like industrial revolution versus post-industrial revolution, where at first, you know, well, for most of human history, men and women worked side by side. There wasn't really
Yeah.
this power dynamic struggle. You worked out on the farm and both of you worked, otherwise you didn't survive the winter. But once the Industrial Revolution hit, we started sending men out of the home to go to the factory or the shop, the office, you know, the mine or wherever it was. And we sent the men, like you were saying, because those jobs were hard, they were dangerous, that, you know, they were uncomfortable. And we did that so that women didn't have to do that. It wasn't a power play, it was a sacrifice. Um,
Yes, it was.
but
Yes.
it got reinterpreted in the 20th century to be a power issue because I mean, people started to see that, oh, well, if men are doing the jobs, they're the ones bringing home the money, and the money is what gives them the leverage and the power. So that's not fair. And since, you know, we started to buy into that narrative that you can only be happy if you have power, um,
Hmm.
that's when the message started to get out there that, hey, women can only be happy if they have jobs, because that
Hmm.
means that's the only way for them to have independence and autonomy and power. And now that's that narrative, it's why it's going to be incredibly difficult to fight to get any laws changed in this regard. As long as that narrative is there, it's very easy for the female camp and those who and the men, you know, the white knights and the men who support them. It's very easy for them to paint this narrative that says that, oh no, if we get rid of these laws that you know protect women, that's regressive. You're sending women back to a place where they're subjugated, and that's demeaning, and that's belittling, and that is shameful, right? They can use all types of really emotionally resonant arguments to try to shoot those laws down. And that will continue to work until we disconnect from this idea that power is what makes you happy. It's not working, by the way, right?
No.
That whole idea that power makes your life better, it's like once you actually have some, you know, authority, you realize it is a burden, right? It's
It
a
is.
responsibility. Like there's people that are depending on me, and their
Yeah.
lives are going to suck if I make the wrong choices. And
Well,
that's
yeah, unless you're one of those people who doesn't care and you're okay with, like, you know,
yeah.
treating people like dirt because you want a taste of power.
Yeah,
But yeah,
those exist, and
yeah.
yeah, I do everything I can to encourage guys not to go that route. It's becoming that's one of my concerns, is that that's gonna be a part of this sort of male backlash to
Mm.
the feminist movement, is that men will become so embittered and frustrated that they just want to swing the pendulum all the way to the other side. And they become in that sense, just like, I don't care about anybody but myself because nobody else cared about me. It's this sort of like, hey, you all hate me? Fine. I'm going to hate you right back. And I'm just going to look out for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think that's likely. I don't know. I just see from what I see, and maybe I'm just an optimist, but I think that a
To be clear, I
man.
don't want that. That's
No, I know you don't want that. I know
hope
you don't
that
want
doesn't
that, but
happen. Yeah.
I do see a lot of concern about like that, the pendulum swinging too far the other way. And all I would say to that is, that, well, how did it get this far? Like,
Yeah.
like what? Why don't we address this so that that isn't even on the radar? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why would I would ask you? Why would people wait until there is potentially a backlash? Because this is something that I've seen. We've been doing this for 10 years. We've been talking about all of these issues, and it starts like, very early with, but primarily, I think the main issue is fatherlessness. I think that's like the main,
Yeah.
it's like the linchpin that like, is, I think, causes the most damage.
Yeah.
Because families need fathers. They need men to protect the family, and men really want to do this. This is why I don't know that this is like likely to happen. I think men want, if it's like one of those things where if a woman just said, you know what, I'm sorry for what I've done, I love you, and the men would just come right back. Like it would
Yeah.
it would immediately melt away. But
For most men, I would agree.
for
Yeah,
most men, yeah, I think absolutely. But I would ask, where do you think that idea, that this idea of a power paradigm that exists between men and women, where do you think that came from?
That is, well, it's a Marxist philosophy. It started, I mean, he frames it as a class issue. It's the
It's a
prolet
class struggle, sort of
yeah,
it's been repackaged with gender.
repackaged into a gender struggle. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the exact same arguments though. It's the
Hmm.
idea that if you're under someone else's power and authority, they are always taking advantage of you. And if someone else has power over you, then then yeah, that's a bad thing. But you can't be actualized. You can't have a good life yourself unless you seize the means of production or whatever or take back power from the patriarchy. It's all the same thing.
Yes.
So
But it's
yeah.
been way more effective
Yeah,
at it. Yeah.
strangely, yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't work well. I guess it depends on what you mean by effective. It has been effective in
If you want to
changing the
divide people, I
yeah.
think the gender patriarchy narrative has proven to be far more effective at doing that than, say, just a class struggle.
Yeah.
Because at least in the States, but I think probably all over the West, working class people were glad to, like they wanted to provide for their families because they had this kind of I guess you could say Protestant work ethic that they were,
Yeah.
that they built everything on. So you couldn't tell them, well, actually you're being taken advantage by that rich guy, and this guy's like, well, I have enough. And so they said,
Yeah.
well, that's not working, so we got to do this another way. So
Yeah.
they said, well, why don't we just send, like, we'll tell the women that they're the ones that are being oppressed by their men.
And that
You know?
actually happened in kind of a similar way. The feminist movement, at least the second wave feminist movement, didn't have a lot of support for a long time. Like there were pockets. It began fairly early on. That push started fairly early on in the 20th century. It didn't really gain any ground until the mid 20th century because most women were happy in the places, reasonably happy, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I know. I
It
think
wasn't until
that
yeah,
about as
the
happy as men. I mean,
yeah.
life wasn't easy for anyone
No.
for most of history.
For
So,
most of history, yeah, it wasn't
yeah,
until you had, a bunch of a movement come along and basically convince a bunch of people who were happy, hey, no, actually, you're not happy, and here's why you're not happy. It's because of all this, this stuff that's being done to you. You're actually, this is demeaning to you. This is belittling to you. This is a shameful place for you to be under the subjugation of a man. Like that, it's like you're happy right up until somebody tells you hey, you shouldn't be happy and here's why. And that was when the shift started to happen.
Yeah.
So,
And it I think, speaking in generalities, I think that it is easier to plant that seed in,
mm,
like, to make them feel like, because they're, they tend to have higher levels of, you know like negative emotion, and like they're you can make them feel like there's something wrong when there isn't, if
yeah.
you talk them into it. It's kind of like what, again, it goes back to Adam and Eve.
And there,
There's
yeah, and there are
ancient wisdom
statistical
there.
models that say that this isn't just
Sure, sure.
conjecture. Yeah.
No, no,
So,
no, no.
yeah,
Yeah, our audience is smart. They know what I'm
yeah,
talking about.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's right. I knew about the Marxist stuff. We talk about it a lot. There's a
Mm,
book I would recommend that you check out. It is because it is written. There's lots of books on feminism,
mm.
history of, but there is one that I think is kind of up your alley. It's called Occult Feminism. Rachel Wolf. He
Okay.
goes into, because this is really old. Like I think that people often talk about the feminist movement. I don't want to spend too much time on feminism, but people talk about the feminist movement, and they usually discuss it either starting from the suffrage movement or the second wave, sort of Gloria Steinem 60s.
Yeah.
But this goes way back to like the French Revolution, Enlightenment, like some of the
Yeah.
early proto feminist stuff. Mary Wollstonecraft, I don't know if you know who she is, but the first feminist. Her daughter Mary Shelley is the woman who wrote Frankenstein,
Yep.
and she, so there is a lot more to it. But I would, if you're interested, I would ask you to check out that book. Also,
Yeah.
there's a woman that I absolutely adore. Her name is Janice Fiamengo, and she has written extensively on the, she's a literary professor, but she does a lot of research. She can blow your mind with she's learned about this. But
Okay. Yeah.
but okay, so we have this issue, and I guess we're all trying to figure out what to do. But my main interest is in like, how do we start to address this? There will be a lot of suffering, and I know that
Yeah.
it's change won't come before the suffering. But what do you think about, because you're critical of sort of like spiritual leaders and their approach. Have you spoken to any? Have you tried to like reach out and say, like the world you grew up in is not, I'm Gen X, I'm 50, but
Hmm.
I guess that's like at the tail end maybe. I'm not really sure how it works. I don't really keep track, but I know I'm a Gen Xer. And it took a while for it to work out for me. Like I was, I had to basically had to get into the whole like red pill thing and doing the men's issues, and then I met a woman through that.
Yeah.
And because she was aware of these things, I think I had the advantage. And I think in a way that could be a way to sort of like bridge this gap, because a woman who is open-minded and learns about these things and realizes, that men want to be loved, they want to be nurtured and cared for, just like a woman does. I think that could be a way, because we always say here on this channel that men leading, which is like what is they're usually told, men just lead the way, women will follow. I don't think that's working out. And there's data that shows that men and women are moving, like the younger generations are moving further apart
Yeah.
than ever. So what do you think about that?
I mean, as far as like solutions and
Like,
approaches to it, or
yeah, like should women have a part to play in this? There was even a story of this Orthodox priest doing a talk, and he said that there are stories in the Bible, and I'm using it as my reference point, where men were unable to lead, and so God chose women to do it just for a little while. I forget the
yeah,
saint, but there were some saints that were women that had to like step up. Maybe like, I don't know if Joan of Arc is an example, but
yeah. In the Book of
know.
Judges, there's one called Deborah.
I think that's it. I think it's Book
Yeah.
of Judges. Yeah.
So the deal with that was that the men wouldn't step up to lead the war party, I guess, against, I don't know if it was the Philistines or whatever, but basically that was considered a shameful thing for the men. Right. She basically said, "Hey, one of y'all step up and do this." And nobody did. And she's like, "All right, fine, but then you're gonna have it on your head that a woman led you into battle, right?" So, but it's yeah. I do think that I do think that the only way we can see real change in this is if women participate in the change process. I don't know precisely what that looks like. I know that the only in the church, women will only make changes and adjustments if other women are speaking to them about it. So
No, this
there's
is everywhere. Yeah, well, it's
yeah,
like women, uh, they if they know that it's safe to to speak up because someone else has started the process, like small stones tumbling down a mountain, so that it creates a
yeah.
um yeah, I think that's true everywhere. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it'll have to, I mean, the problem is women won't address it until men can somehow find a way to convince female leaders to address it. Because it doesn't appear to be something that women are noticing or or they're not coming to sort of a realistic consensus on it on their own. And so like, but the problem is like going back to what we were talking about before in the church or in a lot of places, actually, most of the older guys that I talk to, they just don't know. And so they're not talking to the women of the church about it. They're not encouraging female leaders to speak to the younger girls about it. Um, as far as the stuff that those leaders should be saying to women, I think that I mean the biggest problems are going to be coming from things like social media and dating apps. I think those are basically just get off of them. Just leave them behind.
I think that more men are leaving dating apps altogether. I believe that
Yeah.
Generation Z is more interested in meeting in real life
Yeah.
than previous generations. So I do think that there is, and I don't know about Alpha. They're a little too young right
Yeah, it's tough to tell
now.
with that. But yeah, I think that that would be a start. I think that addressing the power dynamic narrative, I think a lot of older guys, because they grew up with this sort of again, yeah, I don't want to get into feminism too much either, but like they grew up with this sort of feminism guilt trip of like, hey, y'all are oppressing us. Hey, y'all shouldn't be like holding us
You're
back
talking
and
about
holding us
Zoomers?
down. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they a lot of the older guys to some degree have bought into that, and so they're very sensitive about stepping on that sort of sore spot, and so they don't really want to take that head on, and so yeah, there's going to be some difficulty in convincing some of the older leaders to address it head on and
Yeah.
speak about that power dynamic issue in a way that
Yeah.
reflects, because it's as if they've sort of unwittingly bought into that premise that power, they accidentally believe that power actually does make you more valuable. And they speak as if that's true. I don't think they know that they're doing that, but
Hmm.
and I don't and to be clear, just in case it sounds like I'm being super critical of like the church and my brothers and sisters in Christ, like it's not the church as an organization that I believe is like a bad thing or that I'm
Right.
criticizing. It's this sort of cultural miasma that's sort of kind of, I guess, blinding and kind of choking out some of the truth in our mindset about it. And so I think that it's going to take some time, it's going to take some effort and people speaking up. Before we start to get through and get realistic views
Yeah.
um
Well,
being
the church
spoken
is
about.
full of human beings just like the rest of the world. So they're
Yeah.
gonna have the same, flaws and foibles. We're constantly struggling to figure this all out. So yeah, I mean, I think that's right. That's a good point. I wonder if there is a way, like if there are women's groups, and there could be a way to, start this conversation with women. I think
Yeah.
that that would be that's kind of what we're doing. Here we they're not this is obviously not a religious channel. We don't
Yeah.
talk about that, but I think that there is some truth to maybe what is needed is a grand narrative. So when
I would agree with that. Yeah.
so I have a on my Twitter, and I don't recommend going to Twitter. It's cancerous, but I like to
It's,
I like to argue, so I go there.
nice.
On my Twitter, I made a post where I said, you know, one of the problems with men, I think that even the audience can agree with this, okay? One of the problems facing young men today, that not only are they beaten down by all of this feminist rhetoric about patriarchy and how oppressive they are and terrible and everything, but they're also told that women are the best thing for them to strive to. Right?
Yeah.
To put it in, other terms, they're basically treating women like an idol,
Yes.
also an idol that abuses them. So you have men that
Yeah,
are
that's
trying
a good way to put it. Yeah.
you have men that are trying to gain favor with this idol, and this is where the white knights come from, and the
Yep.
simps and everything else, right?
Absolutely,
and these women, they're flawed. They have all kinds of their own problems. They're angry at their father, or they don't know him. They're on OnlyFans, whatever it is. And so I said, well, this can't be solved unless those men are pursuing something higher than women,
Yes.
right? And this is like, I mean, we know what we're talking about here, but it has to be some higher calling, something transcendent. And if they do that, I think that will be better for them. That way, no matter how things shake out, they will be better able. Because I think one of the problems that men have now is that they're supposed to see women as above them, and they're supposed to pursue that while also understanding that they are like the cause of all of their suffering, the cause of all of women's problems.
Yeah.
Now, if that's true of men, it must also be true of women.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think is really missing. Like, what does it mean to be the ideal woman? What is the transcendent female that has to be like modeled, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right now it's as if, like, as a man you're taught that you can't be happy without a woman, and as a woman you're taught that you can't be happy without power. Neither
Yes.
of those things are true, but that's what we're both striving for. And since neither of us are really getting what we want in that sense, we're not really winning that fight. Most guys aren't ending up with the woman that they're looking for, and most women are either not ending up with the power they're hoping for, or they realize that actually it's not it won't make them happy the way they're expecting it to.
Yeah.
Or even if you are a guy and you end up in that relationship you're looking for, you end up realizing, oh, actually this doesn't make me a whole human being. I am not the most fulfilled thing ever. This is good, but it isn't that transcendent thing that you're talking about. And so I think, to go back to what you're saying about narrative, I think one of the reasons why a lot of the anti-male movements that are out there right now have sort of reached the heights that they have is because they found compelling narratives.
Yeah.
And so I do agree that, like, we do need to do some work to try to get some of the laws changed, because I don't think we'll be able to thrive as a society while laws are the way that they are. I don't think men are going to get married. They're not going to get married. They're not going to have kids, as long as it's as much of a legal liability as it is. However, I don't think it'll be possible for us to change those laws until we first change narrative, because those
Yeah.
laws got there because of the super compelling narratives that people fought. It's not a technical issue to most people. It's a story issue. So you can put the data out there all you want about, like, this is what's going on, this is where humanity's headed, this is this is what is. But people aren't usually compelled by what is. They're compelled by what could be, or what they think should be. They want emotion to it. They want to go somewhere, right? They're looking for that transcendent purpose, that thing that will not only make their own life better, but that thing that will make their life mean something. Like, I did this for this cause, and this changed the world. This saved humanity. That's why a lot of movements like feminism and many progressive movements, or even conservative movements, they gain a lot of traction with people, and they gain rabid followers, because it's not just about the thing, it's about the meaning that person gets from feeling like, I'm doing something that's going to save the next generation of humans and steer us towards a better future. That's an incredibly meaningful thing. It can be. And it's an incredibly powerful thing. The problem is when you have a narrative that isn't based in reality, it's based in a compelling narrative. It gives you that story that you're looking for. It makes you feel like your life is valuable and meaningful. But in reality, you're actually tanking all of humanity. So yeah, I think the only way that we'll be able to get out of this is to find narratives that are both compelling and healthy. Um,
Yeah,
so
I think the culture, you know, what you're basically getting at in a way is the culture has to change. That there is, like, people are not motivated to change the laws because they feel no sympathy for men's situation, and by extension, they have less sympathy for families and children because you can't like eliminate one thing and have it not affect other things. You know, like you can just look at how what the conversation around family is today, what the conversation around climate is, where they say, "Oh, we're overpopulated, we
yeah,
shouldn't be having kids," or you know, they talk about abortion, like everything. I mean, at the end of the day, every issue that people talk about comes back to men and women. Like
yeah,
all of it comes back to men and women. So if you frame it outside of that, where people aren't paying attention to the man and the woman at the center of everything, and they're talking about the earth, and they're talking about material goods, and you know, and capitalism, and all these other things, then you're distracted from this. This is what matters. Like everything else comes from that. So I think that these the promises, you know, that people buy into, they are essentially material. You
yeah,
know, like these things about power, all this stuff that you don't take with you, money, the new phones, the new clothes, whatever. And I think that it would appear to me that women are more susceptible to those things.
yeah,
um you know, there was a joke that comedians would always say that if a man didn't have to buy a big house and have a decent car, he would live in a cardboard box. But because he wants to attract women, you know, because
yeah.
he wants to draw
Yeah,
women in, you know,
I've
he has
heard
to
that.
get,
Yeah,
yeah, he has to acquire, you know, capital and land and everything else. So I mean, it makes sense because women want to raise children in a safe and healthy environment.
yeah,
So these are not, you know, this is just what makes sense. So we have inverted all of those things essentially. You know, women now can buy houses and they own stuff and they get property, and they're looking for men that can give them even more than what they have.
yeah.
And that is few and far between, and men are not able to measure up to that. And so we have this, you know, we have this serious problem now.
Yeah, we have the math problem. You have a large percentage of women who have no interest in the vast majority of men. So they're effectively holding themselves out of the conversation. They won't even interact with those guys. They don't those guys don't
They're
exist
invisible.
to them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're invisible.
But then you have this, and so they're focused on this tiny percentage of men. That tiny percentage of men does not need to treat those women very well because they have all those options. They never learn to. So women begin to view all men thinking that
Through
that's
that
what they
lens.
are.
Yeah.
And then you've got all these guys who just they get no attention from women at all. And yeah, it just relationships don't happen, because there effectively isn't a willing woman out there for them. And there isn't a woman that's willing to talk to them a lot of the time,
Yeah.
let alone date them.
Absolutely.
And so yeah,
Absolutely.
it creates this math problem that
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah, and you know, you also you condition women to fear men
yes.
as well. So, you know, there's just so many compounding factors. But I think that because we're running out of time, I'm going to go into the patron show
Yep.
here in a moment, but I think that ultimately I think we're on the same page. I think, you know, it's about, okay, so we have this problem, we can't ignore it. It's not going to get better, and simply bullying men into, like, you know, joining something or changing their ways or stepping up, it's not enough, right? So like,
No.
yes, men want to do those things. I think men want to, you know, have like a something to move towards, something that they should be, like, you know, elevating themselves to. I don't think that women itself is high enough. I think that's part of the problem, but I also
Yeah.
think women have to be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no other way. And
Yeah.
so if there's, you know, female leadership or something, I think that could be a good start. You
Yeah.
know, if you know any women that are doing videos, like, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever, let me
I
know and I'll have them on. I don't know. We
yeah.
we do see, but I will say, just to put a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, I have noticed that more and more people, especially women, are speaking up more. So
Yeah.
I'm seeing this, and it's getting to the point where it can't be ignored. Like, everyone's talking about the loneliness crisis, the male loneliness epidemic, and so on. And, you know, we are like, yeah, we've been talking about that for 10 years, but I'm glad that, you know, we're all starting to, like, get caught up, because all these other things, they're kind of a distraction, you know,
Yeah.
from that. So, okay, you have any final thoughts? And then I'm gonna read a super chow and go to the Patreon show.
Um, yeah, no, I think we've hit most of the important stuff. I mean, I do see like you were asking earlier if, you know, if I've talked to any of the sort of Christian leaders that I've been, you know, that I've been referencing in those videos. And I have it at the churches that I go to. I talk to them about this stuff, and they are a lot of times they accept it, like they receive it as sort of an oddity and go, "Huh, I didn't know that." And some of them are attentive and they listen and they're like, okay, I can see how that would be a problem. A lot of times they don't necessarily have any sense of urgency about it.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect many of them will just sort of assume that if we just, you know, the problem is faith, you know, it's a faith problem. If these guys would just step up and have a better faith, that would just naturally solve all of their problems somehow. There's not necessarily a mindset of like, hey, there's a novel problem here. This is brand new and this is big and this is going to rip men out of the church, and we need those men, you know. But there's more of this mindset of, it'll sort itself out if we just keep doing what we've been doing and we just do it better, you know. And so
Yeah,
there's
do it more, right?
and
Yeah.
that's really alienating to a lot of the young guys who are like, no, this is not working.
And
Something needs to
what
change.
about, yeah, and what about all the men who are, you know, they're not a part of the church. They're just like, they
Yeah.
don't know, like they're looking for help, and maybe
Yeah.
that would be help, but they're skeptical.
They're skeptical,
you
yeah.
know, yeah, so like it's not going to draw them in if you just say, you know, we're not going to solve your problems, but we're gonna
No.
make you feel bad about it, you know, and so men are
Yeah.
just going to run away
Yeah, so
from that stuff.
I mean, to the guys who are skeptical and a little maybe concerned about that, I would say there are a handful of churches out there that you can find that will recognize these problems and that will be more willing to address it. The church that I go to is fairly solid with this stuff. You know, it's a place where they actually there aren't a lot of problems between men and women in our community, to the point that like when I bring it up to a lot of men, they're just like they're so confused by it. They're like, huh? What?
Yeah.
There's all this stuff going on out there in the world. Like, huh? They have no idea, because it's actually a lot of these problems are so rare for us.
Yeah,
So
I
there
think
are
that's what I think.
yeah,
Like, you live in different worlds.
yeah, it's like you there. So what I would say is, you know, if you're on that like skeptical boat, I would say, I mean, maybe consider it. I mean, there are places out there where you will be welcomed as a man, you will be encouraged as a man and built up and supported. And, you know, they may not see all of the problems right now, but hey, maybe you're the person that could help them to recognize it and to address it more directly.
Yeah.
Because that's what we need right now is young men speaking up about it and letting the leaders know, hey, this is what's going on out there. We could really use your guidance and your, you know, whatever life wisdom you've acquired. You know, it's not a wisdom problem. A lot of these leaders are very wise. They're smart. They've got a lot of life experience. It's just they don't have the right information in their brain a lot of time. So, you know, maybe it could be you're the person that brings it up to them, and then you can access that wisdom and guidance that they have. So, yeah, I would say if you're discouraged or skeptical about that and you're looking for a place to go where you can get built up and supported and encouraged,
Mhm.
they're rare, but there are churches out there that can offer that to you. So, and to any Christian leaders who happen to hear this, I really hope that they internalize some of this and at least do some digging, and see if maybe this is a topic that they might need to address more directly. So
all right, yeah, sounds good. Well, Matt, thanks, man. I got a super, stick around, we're gonna do the patron show, but
okay,
I got a super chow from Richard Bier. He gives us $5 and says, one logistical problem with the women who are in leadership roles is that they spend as much or more effort in the battling over who the leader should be and the constant battle over just what agendas should be pursued, as there are many who want a particular agenda whether it works or not because the recognition of the agenda is tied to a particular woman recognition. Thank you for that. I think it's, again, speaking in generalities, I think that when women are in positions of power, a lot of times they see it as just that, and it puts them in intersexual competition with women and also with men. It does create a different dynamic, and I think that's generally what Richard is trying to say. So, but thank you for the message, Richard.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
There's always going to be that danger there that it's about, I mean, because there's another aspect of it that we didn't really touch on too, which is just straight up pride,
Yes.
and attention seeking.
I was gonna mention that in the like later on, like that there is like a problem of pride and vainglorious,
Yeah.
in women and in men too. Just I
Yeah.
think it's a problem across the board. But
Yeah.
all right, well,
Humility.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Humility is always going to be like honest humility about yourself is always going to be healthier than a pride mindset. So
Yes, that's right.
yeah.
And then I got a Rumble rant from NovaFan21 who gave us $2 and says, I unfortunately believe that so long as the power belief exists for women and men, society will be crumbled regardless of side win. Well, the thing is that I don't think men are trying to win. I think that we just want peace,
Yes,
so
we're playing we're not playing to win, we're playing not to lose.
Yeah,
or more like,
I mean, if one side wins, we all lose. So
yeah.
But all right, so we're gonna head into the patron show. So if you guys want to join us in the patron show, you have to become a member by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord, where you'll be able to watch all of the additional shows, just like you're watching this one right now. And hopefully we will see you there. And if you give it higher levels, you can even join in the Zoom call and talk to Matt yourself in person live, which is super exciting. So I want to I'm excited. I want to thank you, Matt, so much for coming on such short notice. Really appreciate what you're doing. I think that this problem has to be tackled with as many people from as many different backgrounds as possible, because we all want the same thing, right? So thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Sure. And if you guys, we're gonna head out now, so if you like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show. All of Matt's links are in the description, so check out his various, he's on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, right?
Mostly YouTube.
Yeah, mostly YouTube. Yeah.
Check out the YouTube. It's plenty of content.
Check out the YouTube. It's a small channel. You're probably gonna blow up now, by the way. We have this thing where when people come on our show, they blow up later. It's
awesome.
Not us. We never blow up, but like everybody else does. We're like,
good luck, Chuck.
We're like Saint Christopher. We just carry you across the river, and then you just blow up after that. So
awesome.
So anyway, check out his links in the description, and please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thanks so much for coming on today's episode of the Fireside Chat. We'll talk to you all in the next one.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.